Welcome to Permission to Be Human, the podcast. I'm your host, Mel Finlater, mother, coach, and curator of Permission to Be Human, the company and community. If you're a mom, know a mom, or want to be a mom, and you crave getting out in the world to make a difference, then you're in the right place. This is a space for moms like you to connect with yourself, your purpose, and your big, audacious dreams. Because when you feel your best, you can better you, your family, and the wider world. Let's do this. Okay, today I feel so privileged to have our speaker come and talk to us today. We have Mandy Martini Quiem Choilup, and she is here today to share her story from a totally different perspective than I am used to in my everyday. Mandy is an Indigenous writer and teacher who has spent the last 7 years helping people around the world live without stress and trauma through her online work. She's been recognized by the global nonprofit organization, the Crisis Text Line, as a mental health leader to follow and learn from. Her dream is to continue sharing the knowledge and perspective of her people to show that Indigenous wisdom can help us to not only survive the stress and demands of today's society, but also thrive. And I really loved my conversation with Mindy and feel just, honored to share in that wisdom that she has. And it gave me a totally new perspective on the way my body is responding to times of stress. So stick around to learn something new and hear a beautiful story. All right, welcome. Hi, Mandy.
Hi.
I love that you are here with us today. Tell us a little bit about who's Mandy.
Well, so my Western name is Mandy Martini, and my native name is Quyen Choilup, which means Quyen means moon, and Choilup means mist spreading over a lake. I'm an Indigenous teacher. I teach mental health and trauma, stress specifically, and helping people live a life without it. So helping them understand their bodies so they don't have to keep living their lives with trauma.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited as a non-Indigenous person to learn some of the knowledge that you and the generations past have in all of this, because mental health is a challenging thing for many of us, and anything that we can do to support that along the way and is needed, definitely.
It is, yes.
And whereabouts are you based?
I'm in upstate New York between Onondaga Nation territory and Catskills.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent. So you've told us a little bit in terms of who you are. Maybe dive into that a little bit more.
Yes. So maybe I should start with how I started teaching.
Sure.
So I moved away from my family when I was 19, and almost immediately I went through trauma. About 9 months into been living in Los Angeles, and I went through sexual assault and went through domestic violence and school shootings. It was just one thing after another, and I had for a long time, since high school, I think, or middle school, always thought that we have to adapt to Western culture and listen to, because that's the main thing we hear, and there's the only thing we hear really around us. So I was trying really hard to fit in and to become Westernized, and I just listened to what this culture or this society told me to do with the trauma I'd been through, right? So I went through 8 years of therapy, and I did everything, meditation, yoga, like every self-help book and all these things. And it wasn't until I was living with domestic violence, and I was like, I really didn't believe I was going to get out of that. It was becoming very dangerous and very I was counting my days, and I was like, this is it. I'm not gonna leave like without being part of remembering who I am.
Mm.
So I actually got my traditional tattoos tattooed on me just as a reminder, because we say that that's how our ancestors recognize us when we pass away. So and then I started letting my body release the trauma I've been through the way had been taught before. And this had been like 8 years of trauma that I just been piling up inside of me. I was so overwhelmed and exhausted. I was, for anyone who's lived with trauma for a long time, or stress, know how exhausting it is, and just drains every part of you. And the moment I started doing this, I started getting my energy back, and I started seeing a way out. I started seeing like opportunities or ways for me to get out. So that's actually like 2 months later is how I actually got out. So I think that when we live with trauma, it's hard to see possibilities. It's hard to see different ways to, because we're so focused on just surviving. So I think it just to help my mind and my body to see more clear and to get that clarity. And I made it out, and then I was actually in a support group for other women who had survived domestic violence. And we went around the table, and everyone sharing their stories. And then when I was sharing mine, and they're like, "You're so calm. Like, how can you be so calm after what you've been through?" And I told them about my people, and I told them about how we let stress and trauma, how we finish the survival response in our bodies so we don't have to live with it. So you don't get triggered anymore, and you don't have to live with it anymore. So they asked me to teach them, and one thing led to another. And I now have an online program with people in over 40 countries. So that's how I got to start teaching it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. A couple of things come to mind. One is that, like, I just want to breathe into that. Like, that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot we didn't get the detail of that, but I can't even imagine what that trauma for so long was like, on top of, generations of trauma and stress as well.
Yeah.
And, your calmness and your demeanor really shows that you have been able to take it, like, release it from your body, right?
Mhm.
Because,
Yeah.
Permission to be Human is the name of this podcast. And a lot of that for me is really tapping into the fact that as a human, we have things that happen
Mhm.
to us, that things that we do, but also we have all these emotions and these feelings and these things that, like, we are our body as well as our mind.
Yeah.
And we so often want to, I can think of some people, myself included, that at times don't want to talk about the hard things because it brings it up again, right? But what happens is we hold it all in, and what you're expressing is this way of letting it out and moving through that.
Yeah.
And it is only through that that we're going to heal and move on.
And it's not even, like a lot of people, like you said, they don't want to talk about it, and you don't have to do it, because what's going on is it's your body is in this response. So
Yeah.
it's your body that needs to finish it. Not There's nothing you can talk about that will it's,
Yeah.
it's like telling a plant to grow. It doesn't matter. The plant has to grow, right? You
Yeah.
can't. So it's a natural, it's a process, it's a cycle, just how we move through a cold, or move through a period, or move through a pregnancy and birth. All these are cycles, and it's has to happen inside of your body. And just going from that, living so many years with trauma, and then getting to experience healing and how it feels like, like all the weight lifting from you, it just made me realize how, like, this is the reason why my family fought so hard since like the 1880s, when we were put on reservations, when the whole reservation system started. and they fought so hard ever since to protect our traditional knowledge and to protect our land, because that's where we were able to practice our knowledge and our culture. So I just like, this is the reason, this is how important it is, because once we get into like these societies, and my great grandmother, she warned about that when we got put into reservations. She said that the is going to make us forget. It's going to make us forget how to listen. And that's what we're seeing in this culture, right? People don't know how to listen to what they're going through. They don't understand that they're in survival. They just automatically go by, like, like some people describe it as robots or like zombie.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that's not a natural way of living. Like, survival is just how we, our survival response is how to save our lives, not how to live our lives. So it's a big difference.
Wow, that phrase alone, our survival response is how to say that one again, because it was so
We have our
good.
I don't know if I can say exactly the same, but
Yeah.
yeah, we have our survival responses to save our lives, not to live our lives.
Yeah.
They're not, yeah,
Yeah. It's not how
yeah,
we live, right?
yeah, exactly.
So
And,
beautiful.
and that's why our whole culture is based on balance, understanding the dualities of the universe and creating balance. Because if we are in balance, if the earth is unbalanced, if the water is balanced, that creates, it's a domino effect. It's just, if we get sick, the earth gets sick, the water gets sick, everything. So it,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
So how do we do that? How do we get to that stage where we help our bodies move through that cycle?
So the, that's what I teach in my program, is I help people understand these responses we have and be able to, so like my great grandmother said, we forget how to listen. So I help people listen to their bodies. So
Mm.
people are able to recognize whenever they get into a survival cycle, and they know exactly what to do to let the body finish it.
Yeah.
So
Can you
yeah,
give an
so
example of like one thing that we would do to help listen?
yeah, so well, it's something that you might have noticed yourself that your body does, and it's whenever you're angry or nervous or upset or anything like that, right? Your body starts shaking, right?
Mm.
So that is your body, or after you're a mother, right? So after you give birth, your body probably starts shaking. So that's how your body resets itself back to balance. So that's how it resets all the adrenaline and cortisol, which is what we call survival energies, or what my people call survival energies. That's how it reset it back to balance, because we're
Hmm,
not,
that is super interesting. I've never
yeah.
thought about that response in that way before, because that's
Mhm.
definitely my response when I'm super anxious or worried, my daughter as well.
Mhm.
And I've never thought about it in that way. That's such an interesting and lovely way to think about it, is that it's actually doing its job. It's resetting my body
Yeah,
to its balance.
that's so interesting too, because when I see people go through the program, so there's like different lessons, and they get to write in the comment section, and they're like, oh my God, my body's been trying to help me this entire time. Like, it's been
Yeah.
trying, but it's just been like one thing after another, just kept it trapped, right? The survival
Yeah.
response hasn't been able to finish. And that's what our healers keep saying, that stuck energy becomes sick energy. So that's where the illnesses come from. It's like it's it's like stopping a river to create a dam, right? They put up all those concrete walls, keep it trapped. After a
Yeah.
while, we start seeing imbalance with the water, start creating toxicity, and start affecting the life in the water, right? Same thing with us. So keeping that survival energy trapped, and all the adrenaline and cortisol, is just wears us down and start to make us sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, if we shift the story in our mind about
Mhm.
what our body is doing and why, then it releases that resistance,
Yeah.
remove the dam, right?
Exactly. And it's almost like people in the society forget that we are like a river, right? We are,
Mm.
that's how we are, they believe that, it's been a dam for so long that people believe, and you see, like everywhere you see is like people living the same way. So you sort of believe that's natural, right? That's normal. But it's not, right? So like
Mm.
understanding like, well, how does balance actually look like? How does living in balance actually look like? How does health really looks like? And it's not learning how to cope with your pain or learning how to live with your struggle, with trauma and stress and anxiety and depression. It's living without it, right?
Mm.
So that's uh, that's what I'm trying to help people see, so they know that they don't have to live like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, because so many people are like, I don't want to cope anymore, right? That's what we're
Yeah,
taught is
that's
how to cope.
exhausting.
But it is absolutely exhausting.
Yeah,
It is. Yeah.
it is.
And how to like help that move through and allow that actually to just simply do its job and move
It's,
through.
it is. And once you start paying attention to your body too, you'll notice that these like symptoms or even your person, the way you think of your personality is actually a
Mm.
survival response. So like people start
Mm.
to identify as like, oh, I'm an introvert, or I'm an anxious person, I'm a nervous person, or I'm just not a happy person, but it's
Mm.
actually a survival response. So anxiety and stuff like that and pushing people away, that's your flight response, and always getting angry and frustrated, and it's your fight response. And we have all these things as it's just your body letting you know the state it's in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah. My mind's going all these stories. I'm going through each of those in my mind. I'm like, yep, I was in that one then, and I was in that one then.
Yeah,
Just as you speak. Yeah.
yeah, and you cycle through those usually. It's not always the fight. Goes, you go through all these different, and usually when your body has tried to fight or flight for so long,
Yeah.
like it gets so tired that eventually like our second like or our third survival response, it becomes often numbing because you're so exhausted. So our another survival response we do have is numbing ourselves so that we can keep going.
Mm. Yep.
Mm. Yeah.
Can identify with that one. And,
Mhm.
finding whether that be internal or finding that's where addictions and everything come into,
Mhm.
right? We have different behaviors that we can take up and use to numb
Yeah.
because we don't know how to move through that.
Yeah, distractions even. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Scrolling the phone. So tell us, okay, so what would you say your big audacious dream is?
It's to keep sharing this knowledge for more and more people to live without trauma and to understand like what stress is. Like stress is what's like living with stress is what becomes trauma, right? That's becomes the wound that we live with. So for people
Yeah.
to understand have that relationship with their body and understand that no matter what they're going through in their life, there will always be okay, right? Because they have the knowledge to let it go. And to keep sharing that and to keep sharing with the other generations. Like I think I mentioned to you quickly that me and my partner are working on a project in the Catskills of creating like a learning center, Indigenous learning center. So I have my online program is for anyone around the world, but we also letting it fund our project in the Catskills to help other Indigenous people relearn this knowledge.
Mm, that's
Traditional
amazing.
knowledge, yeah. So mixing, it's it's beautiful when you can, you know, share with other people who are from all different walks of life and have them, be a part of what we're trying to do in our community as well. Um,
Yeah, and so needed.
mhm.
Definitely, for me, from a very different walk of life, I with my strength of curiosity, am so curious and about, what is that life like and what are these learnings and what can I learn from this, right?
Mhm.
From this history that, you know, is horrible in so many ways and yet has so much survival in it in other ways. And I love that you are opening up to the wider world whilst also working with the Indigenous world.
Mhm.
And the knowledge that you're sharing is incredible. Like that's world changing if we can all get in tune with our bodies and finish our trauma cycles. And trauma, I have a question around how would you define trauma? Because we keep using that word.
Yeah, trauma is a wound. So I keep using an example of, like, let's say you have a knife in your hand or arm, something like that, like something like a physical wound that you can see. And trauma is like living with that wound all the time without removing that knife. So that's what the adrenaline and cortisol, when it stays in your body, creates a wound inside of you. It's only that you can't see it.
Yeah.
So when you release the survival energies, when you let your body reset itself and come back to balance, it's like removing that knife from the wound so your body can actually heal.
Mm.
So we can absolutely live without trauma. Like, we cannot prevent stress because we never know, like, we're living in a world where all kinds of things can happen, right? And but we can prevent it from becoming trauma. So we can let your body move through the cycle, the survival cycle that's meant to do, finish it so you don't have to live with it and it doesn't have to become trauma or a wound.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited to see the physical space come into fruition. That sounds really exciting to me.
Yeah.
These online world opens the door to so many things and we can reach so many more people. And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing quite like getting together in person.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
So I'm
And it,
excited to see that.
yeah.
Okay, so if you were to give a tip to our audience of something, so we're talking to moms and people in the mothering space, whoever that might be, who have these big audacious dreams, who want to get out there and do their thing in the world. Some of them know what that is, and some of them don't yet. Some of them might be
Mm-hmm.
stuck in that survival mode that you're talking about and
Mm-hmm.
not able to see possibility, as you also
Mm-hmm.
mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious what you would like to say to those people listening.
Yeah. I have a lot of mothers coming into my program, and talking also about, like, now wanting to show their children that they're not just angry and frustrated and stressed, and wanting to
Mhm.
show them a better way of living, right? I think that's what every mother wants to do, right? Is show a good example and teach their children how to you know be okay in this world, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's completely possible. I want if any mother or any person is listening to this to know that, like, this response or reaction to survival, like the anger and frustration and the stress, and it's not part of who they are. It's not who you are or who you're meant to be or stay there. You don't have to do that at all. And your
Mm.
body is completely possible. It was meant to always release these responses. You can never forget that, you know, without our ability to heal, life wouldn't even be possible. Like, healing is a requirement, right? Otherwise, it just can't continue. So just I mean, like I mentioned before, like, pay attention to these responses you have when you're angry or frustrated, when your body is trying to release and reset itself, when it's just starting to tremble or shake, or you have a twitchy, and some body parts are twitch and stuff like that. Just let it do it, let your body move through that to release any adrenaline and cortisol or any stress you have in your body. So paying attention and being aware, what is the response and what is you? There's two different things. You're not the same person you are in survival as you are the real you.
Yeah, what's a response and what's just you? I I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes me think of how, mothers who have birthed their children, like that's a trauma. So all of us have had it, right? We've
Mhm.
all been, been through that. And I think so many of us still do have that wound there that is not
Yes.
being allowed to heal.
Yeah. So for us, like after like birth, it's very important
Yeah.
that then we let the mother release.
Mhm.
But it's not something you see in Western society. So you see a lot of postpartum depression and struggle after birth that would not be necessary if people.
Mhm.
But but the good news is that it's never too late. So
Yeah.
yeah,
What does that release look like when you say,
it
in your culture, that's what you do after
so
birth?
so I don't know if you remember your body shaking after birth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so for some people who reached out to me, they say that their doctors or nurses had them stop shaking. So trying to prevent it from shaking, or they were stopped by the epidural. So what I meant is we place a lot of focus there to let the mother go through that. So to finish shaking until it's over. So that's what we do. So
Hmm.
that when I help people go through like years of trauma, like so some people that come to me some people haven't been through any trauma, it's more stress and being unhappy, but some people have lived through trauma for 40, 50 years. And I do something very similar to like helping the body basically get back to those situations and to release it. So because the body still believes it's still living in it. So but during birth, that's something that happens automatically. It's very hard to stop. It's you know
Yeah. I
the same
think there's
thing.
something about the stories that we tell ourselves around it though, right? So like,
Mhm.
I'm kind of reliving my birth right now and my shaking was during the pregnancy and we all thought something was totally awry, right?
Yeah,
Which led down all these other decisions and routes that we went down. When actually, if I think of it with a completely different story and meaning behind it, then it's like, oh, my body knows that like it's been this long and it's time to let that go a little, right?
yeah,
It's time to release, which
yeah.
is a totally different mindset.
It is, and I keep having people that reach out to me, and they'd be like, they went through something like an upsetting thing with a family member, or something happened, and they were really upset going to bed, and then they like wake up in the middle of the night and the body is shaking, and their partner's like, what's going on? What's wrong? They're like, nothing is good. It's all good. Just
Just
letting,
letting it go.
yeah, this is what it's
Yeah.
supposed to do.
Huh.
So yeah,
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 that's amazing. Thank you for sharing
okay.
that. I'm going to reflect on that a ton now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Anything else you want to say before I start asking you how we can find you?
Hmm. No, I think, yeah, I think I got it.
Awesome. No,
Yeah.
that's great. I think that was so powerful, just such a meaningful reminder to just be us, right?
Yeah.
And to me, what I've also gotten is that reminder that to be me isn't to be my responses. And those are two
Hmm.
different things. And I think
True.
as humans, and especially as mothers who, get our buttons pushed in all sorts of ways every day, that is a really powerful reminder.
Yeah. I really love your podcast name, Permission to Be Human, because it's something I talk with the members in my program a lot. The society doesn't really allow us the space to be human. You have so much responsibilities and so much pressure that you often like people usually put themselves last and don't have the time to listen or let their body be. human, right? Like we're
Yeah.
forgetting that we're human beings, we're not robots going through, even though we live in an industrial society, we are not robots. We have these natural responses that we have had for forever, right? They didn't stop just because we started driving cars and using cell phones. We're still human beings, so can't forget about that.
That's great.
Mm.
Okay, so if people are listening and they're thinking, yes, this is exactly what I need. I need to chat to Mandy more. I need to read more of what she's doing. How can they find you?
I would say go to m-martini.com, and there's a free class right there at the top of the page. And in that free class, I go over much more in depth too about how trauma stays stuck in our bodies and what happens when you release it. And I know a lot of people email me after that, and they're finally, after years of living with stress and trauma, just feel hope that that can change as well. So
Yeah. And hope is what so much
yeah,
of what we need, right?
yeah,
There's a way out
yeah.
of this trauma
Mm-hmm.
response and back to ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to teach it to future generations as well, so that, our children can grow up and, be able to live in balance instead of living in survival. Yeah. Mhm.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you so much, Mandy.
Thank you.
That is it, folks. This has been Mel Finlater on Permission to Be Human, the podcast. And I am so glad that you have joined us here today and hope that you have taken away some tidbits that will help you go away, connect with your big, audacious dream, and make that massive impact in the world that you are dying to make. If you liked today's episode, please, please, please like it, share it. Think of one person that you think would also like it and send it on over to them. Let's get this out there and more moms feeling like themselves, inspired, dreaming big, and out there being them. Please do head on over to find me on Facebook with Permission to Be Human, or Instagram, or you can even pop me an email and say hello at permissiontobehumanalways@gmail.com. Say hello and let me know that you listened. What did you like about it? I would love to hear. If you didn't like it, I don't really want to know. Just kidding. You can share that if you want. I would love to know, however, who you are. Let's connect. Let's find out what you want more of. I want to hear from you, and I want to make it what would be useful to you. As always, remember that you have permission to dream big, permission to feel big, and permission to be you. You have complete and full permission to be human. For real, you do.